Today I'm going to talk about a pretty good coming of age story. It's called The Wednesday Wars, and unlike what the name means, and as the cover shows, it happens in a schoolroom, and it's probably about this little boy. Now, who is that little boy? This guy's named Holling Hood. Yes, that is his name, Hood. And he is great at doing things. He loves reading books, and he hates math, which is your typical average 7th grader. If you mind why there are rats here, we'll get to that later. Currently, though, we're going to talk about the summary. Now, the story starts off with Hood saying that there was this one teacher in this entire school that would hate him. And this is Mrs. Baker. Now, Mrs. Baker probably hates his guts, and he says that all the time at the starting of the book, and she kind of acts like it too, at least the way he describes her. Later on, after he says that he messed up something about Mrs. Baker, and so Mrs. Baker sent out an assassin from an 8th grader to him. Well, this is basically what happened. Let me just draw Hood in yellow, Holling in yellow, and then later I will go ahead and draw the 8th grade assassin here. The 8th grade assassin invited him to play football. And football was pretty good at the time, and well, of course, a 7th grader could not resist football. Or he could, but in this case, there was not much of a choice. Anyways, what happened was this. Oh man, that does not look right. Afterwards, the 8th grader went ahead and went straight towards Holling, who was playing defender, by the way. Holling tried to sidestep away from the running 8th grader and accidentally tripped the 8th grader, which sent him flying towards the goalpost and then actually left a little dent in it. The guy was trembling, and there was a lot that happened to him. He was probably had some sort of mental disabilities now, but fortunately for him, and unfortunately for Holling, that didn't happen. He got 10 days off of school for medical screening, and then, well, yeah, he was fine. By the way, that 8th grader was Duke Sweetchick, a pretty naughty 7th grader himself, his brother too. Now, the guy himself was sent towards the 10 days, and according to Duke Sweetchick, he was all like, "Oh no, my 10 days are coming up." He stayed at the school, pounded lots of chalk onto his hair so it turned white, put some chalk into his mouth so that it looked like fangs, and started running around like crazy. And unfortunately for him, the school was empty except for Mrs. SCHMIDT, who decided that she would just go ahead and come out of her office and just clean up things. Imagine her screams when she saw Duke Sweetchick's brother doing that. And that gave him an additional 4 more weeks of medical screening. Yeah, even though it was false. But hey, at least it worked. Next up, we get this guy, Holling Hood, going ahead and being forced by Mrs. Baker to clean a lot of chalk. Anyways, this is what happened. He cleaned a bunch of chalk, and he also cleaned a bunch of whiteboard markers as well too. And then this gal, Mrs. SCHMIDT, decided that, alright, you've been working so hard that I'll give you a cream puff. And remember, this is during the times of Vietnam War, so this was a pretty good treat as well too. Anyways, Holling was like, a cream puff, and so he worked extra hard. And then he went ahead and went next to the window to dust off some chalk. Unfortunately, the chalk fell onto the cream puffs, now that they were chalky and dusty. So he took one and he was like, doesn't look good anymore. Later, the cook who created the cream puffs was fired from being the official cook of some people, of the wives of the people in Vietnam. Regardless, though, that's pretty much what happened. Later on, Mrs. Baker finally decides that they need to do something productive within these classes, because on Wednesday afternoons, everyone else except for Holling, who's pre-Presbyterian, has to go towards a Catholic school or a Jewish school. And that does not help this guy as well, because this guy's alone for most of the time. Anyways, he's there, and then Mrs. SCHMIDT's all like, alright, do this, do that, and then she finally assigns him a copy. Cute. Anyway, she finally assigns him a copy of a book, and this one is Shakespeare's The Tempest. I read the book myself, it's pretty good. In fact, this whole book is loaded. The Wednesday Wars itself is loaded with references towards Shakespeare books, whether it's The Tempest, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, Hamlet, etc., etc. All of those work out pretty well. Anyways, the Wednesday Wars goes ahead and continues with the guy reading The Tempest. After he finished, Gary D. Schmidt made sure that Holling Hoodwood himself would go off and perform in a play, and that play was none other than The Tempest. And he, Holling Hoodwood, played Ariel, the fairy who had white feathers on his butt. Afterwards, he went ahead and went off towards a baseball signing place because, well, it was late at night and there was not anyone else who would come to go ahead and sign the ball. His friend got there first and got his ball signed, and then when he left, he tried to get his ball signed, and he was all like, no, kid, I'm not gonna sign a baseball bat from someone with white feathers on their butt. No, I'm not doing that. He threw away the perfectly good ball and just left. His friend went ahead, returned the baseball bat that was signed, and said, I won't be needing this after all, and went away without it. Holling's father is a business freak. He is an architect, and he only cares about his company, Hood and Associates. Apparently, the success of everything that happens towards him and Mrs. Baker depends on this guy too. But there is a lot of things that makes the dad even more crazy about the kid. He's just going ahead and doing things over and over again, as well as not learning things that he probably learned before. The thing is, he's forgetting, as well as going ahead and obsessing himself only with architecture, which somehow gives him a baseline foundation. And afterwards, after performing in a play, there finally comes ahead Valentine's Day. And during Valentine's Day, well, Holling decides to take out a classmate as well as probably one of his lovers, Meryl Lee, and they go ahead and come together. They also both read Romeo and Juliet because, well, that's the next book Holling's reading, and she likes it too. According to Holling, it was very tragic, and I know from experience it is very tragic. There is much more that I can talk about the Wednesday Wars, but there's so much time that I can talk about the summary, so I'm gonna have to skip ahead. He goes ahead and reads up a bunch of these manuals. He finally goes on the date with Meryl Lee, and he also gives Meryl Lee some blueprints of his dad's that's, well, is about the school, thinking that nothing about them. And then, well, Meryl Lee shows her father because, well, it's her father. She really loves it. And apparently, her father is the competitor of Holling's dad, Hood, and Associates. And so the dad is all like, I'm gonna copy this myself. It's awesome. And, well, Holling's dad got Holling in trouble. A really big trouble, but not too big for a little kid. It's understandable. Afterwards, the entire class goes ahead, and there's so much more to do. There's this track run meet, and somehow Holling was able to qualify towards the top team in the school because he was being chased by rats during the track time. Wonder why they couldn't get some cat to catch them. Anyways, there were like these two rats at the time, and that were chasing him, and somehow they were able to climb walls with holes in them, and that was able to make sure that he could run as fast as he can, and he was able to run faster. Even faster than what he could currently now. So what happened in the end? Eventually there is so much more that happened towards the Wednesday Wars. In the Wednesday Wars, we get these... Well, we finally find out that Mrs. Baker does not hate Holling, and that she actually loves the guy herself, and that she has a son in the Vietnam War, and she is worried about him. That's why she's always a little bit grumpy. And then finally, until the end of the book, she finds out that the guy, her son, is alive, and that he will be returning during some sort of strawberry time or whatever that is. After finding out that news and announcing it towards the entire class goes off and is given the holiday off. Mainly because it's the holidays and the whole class is going camping. These are the days before portable phones and other things. One more thing I should mention is that Holling's sister also ran away because she was fed up with her father's opinions about women who should be healthcare workers and etc, like all that. And then he went ahead and found her, came back, and there was a lot much more to do. Anyways, afterwards the kids decided to do the camping trip and Holling included, and then, well, Mrs. Baker did too. Even though she hates camping, she still knows how to do it because of her son. And that's about it. that's about it. Oh, and the story itself ends off with a pretty good note as well too. All the entire class goes off with Mrs. Baker to greet Lieutenant or whatever position he is, Baker, in the army back home in safe hands. It's a pretty interesting as well as heartbreaking story as well too. And so that is the summary of Gary D. Schmidt's The Wednesday Ward. I hope to see you guys soon. Until next time, Shanana, peace. Bye bye.